All right, welcome to another Predictable Revenue Live, where you get free coaching from top B2B sales development experts. Our mission as a company is to educate the world on how to grow a business by creating repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue through sales development. So my name is Robin Baldwin. I'm the marketing director here at PR, and I will be your host today. I'm chatting live with our VP of Revenue, Julian Marcuzzi, and Rick Pizzoli, the founder and CEO of Salesforce Europe. So you joined today's live stream because you're ready to scale your sales development team. So from hiring internally to potentially outsourcing sales development reps, or SDRs, as we call them, we're going to chat best practices with two different lenses. So Julian will share a North American perspective and Rick will share a European perspective. And we'll chat about everything from hiring to managing to compensating the team. So if you've got questions, we've got answers. But first, let me introduce our guests. So Julian Marcuzzi has over 10 years of experience in sales. He has spent time as a sales rep manager, and now he is our VP of Revenue here at Predictable Revenue. Julian has a passion for seeing his direct reports reach their full potential. He is most fulfilled when they push themselves to be their best and achieve what was once considered to them as impossible. He doesn't believe in using fear as a motivation tactic. Instead, he'd rather focus on building trust within the team to yield the best results. Effective leadership is an evolving skill and cannot be generic. So every individual has different needs and as such will respond best to the style that speaks to them. Moving over to Europe, we have Rick Pizzoli, who founded Salesforce Europe in 2003 to fill a simple demand, a fast, flexible, and low-risk way to scale international tech sales, delivering sustainable and predictable revenue. He's originally from San Francisco. He worked in Silicon Valley until he was recruited to launch the sales and marketing activities of a new tech startup in Europe in 1996. His business, Salesforce Europe, now provides a fully trained sales team representing tech brands in new markets in Europe. They are handpicked at the senior level. They're pan-European team with an average of 10 plus years experience in enterprise SaaS, channel development, and/or telecommunications. So before I grill these guys on best practices for scaling an SDR team, a couple of housekeeping items. So first, this episode of Predictable Revenue Live is sponsored by our coaching and consulting services. So if you're looking to create predictable revenue at your organization, we can help you grow your business with tailored expert advice backed by testing to ensure you establish the best practices for your company as you scale your SDR team. So if you're watching on YouTube, just click the link below to find out more about our coaching and consulting services. And then throughout today's live, if you have any questions or comments, just pop them in the chat and we'll be sure to answer them. And last but not least, make sure that you click the subscribe button on this page so that you can be notified about more live streams like this in the future. All right, so today's agenda, we're talking about talent, hiring, managing, and then compensation. So we'll do the North American perspective and then the European perspective. So starting with Julian, can you kind of share some of the considerations that you look for when hiring SDRs?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for the intro, Robin, and Rick, thanks for joining us here. So, whether you're hiring your first SDR team or specifically to this webinar, scaling a current one, and again, my perspective being North America, there's a plethora of variables. Really, there's so much to be taken into consideration. You have your culture, both company and region, industry, expertise. You want SDRs that have experience. The list goes on and on. Internal team, remote team, outsourced. I know Rick's going to talk a little bit about hybrid. So where to start? And I'll preface this by saying that I am an advocate for outsourcing SDR teams. Why? Well, my company does just that. It builds SDR teams for our clients. Nice little plug. But joking aside, each company is very unique. So building something internally might be the best decision that your team can make. And regardless if you keep it in-house or outsource the SDR function, the recipe to build an excellent SDR team will really be consistent. And my considerations, like I'm a huge advocate for hiring entry-level talent and really shaping and molding these very often highly motivated individuals to become killer SDRs. And something really important to note, I don't do this as a cost-saving measure whatsoever. if you're looking to hire entry-level talent to save money, it's not going to work. There's this internal investment that you need to make. For someone new into sales, just graduating, changing careers, there needs to be a solid foundation in place. Your processes need to be dialed in. Ideally, you have an incredible internal university or wiki where things are laid out on a platter. You can't expect someone with little to no experience to come in and do an excellent job if they're not set up for success. I've felt that pain. I've been there. I've been given the keys and saying, hey, go figure it out on your own. And it's a nightmare. You don't produce good results. It's a really poor, experience for the employee. And ultimately it's going to be a bad experience for the prospect and client. And this isn't, it's not that more experienced SDRs don't need handholding. It's just that it's that much more crucial when you're talking about inexperienced SDRs. So kind of the next consideration is being able to find, top talent. So how do you find top SDR talent? And before we answer that question, we need to figure out what a qualified candidate looks like. And qualification doesn't need to mean SDR experience. Qualified can mean someone who aligns with your organization culturally or possess traits that align with your company's purpose. At Predictable Revenue, we use the WHO interview method, and something that I'd highly recommend testing and trying out internally for your organizations, which really allows us to focus on their education and work experience, but identify if our candidates have these intangibles that are really important to us as an organization. Now, finding talent is getting more and more challenging. Seems like every day there's a labor shortage. There's more sales roles available than ever. In my opinion, the good old days of posting on a recruiting platform and getting an avalanche of resumes of qualified SDRs is long gone. So what can you do? Obviously, you can spend more on ads, though I'm not sure that's the best way to go about it. Probably something that I wouldn't recommend. What I do recommend, and what we try to do here at Predictable Revenue is get into the community. Get in with your local colleges, universities, sign up for programs where you can mentor individuals. You want to be able to build your own SDR network, much like you've built your own professional network. Another reality is that's becoming more and more apparent is the need to offer a competitive wage. There's so many people hiring for SDRs. The SDRs can have their pick as to where they want to go, and as much as some candidates aren't willing to admit it, money does talk. And lastly, before I pass it back to Rob and Rick, I want to talk a little bit about hiring on culture. This is one of those intangibles that's so important to us at Predictable Revenue. Hire on culture. Remember, you're looking for motivated people who are willing to learn and grow. And if they're not a culture fit, that should be a full stop immediately. Culture fit interview is the last step of our interview process. We get the candidate to teach and play a game with a group of the internal team here. Not only a really fun exercise and kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off the last interview, but it's also super impactful to understand who the candidate really is. So those are kind of my considerations when trying to identify how and where we can go to scale our SDR team.
Awesome. So we shared in Rick's bio that he has a much more experienced team. So maybe Rick, do you want to share how you look at hiring SDRs at Salesforce Europe?
Sure. Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Julian. Great intro. Most of our work is really expanding the lead generation SDR teams of existing teams. And so maybe it's a team in the US who's looking to expand into Europe, or it's a Spanish startup who's looking to expand into Europe. And so we typically come on that expansion phase. And so there's a lot of planning that needs to happen to get that right, because you go into a new country, new culture, new verticals, and all that needs to be done right if you're going to be successful. So the first step before you think about hiring is really look internally as a company, what you did successfully in your home market. So which verticals are you successful in? Typically, a company will start in kind of the experimental phase. They'll be trying to sell to anybody that they can. And maybe you do analysis of your database and find out, well, we have 100 customers, but we have 30 in banking, and we have 10 in finance and let's say marketing, and we have 5 in hospitality. Look at really where your sweet spot customers are, and where you're selling the best, where the leads are moving from leads to opportunities and opportunities to the deals the best, and your customers are the happiest. And then when you look to go international, really map that out, saying, okay, now we have our sweet spot target verticals. Let's focus on that in the new markets. Let's see let's say if Europe is the next market, where those verticals are. I mean, is London a good place? Is France, Spain, or Italy? Depends, where the base of those clients are. Look where your competition is, because you might think, well, London is the next natural place I'm going to go, but you might have 5 competitors in the US and 5 in Europe. Maybe you get 10 in Europe, in London, because it was an easy place for all of them to go next, and it might be very competitive space. You've arrived there too late, and it's going to be quite hard. So do that internal planning, document that sweet spot. Look at the metrics, like how many leads is a full-time lead generation person delivering a day, and how are those leads going from lead to opportunity to deal. And then when you're looking at the revenue objectives, be clear on revenue objectives in the new market. So if it's $1 million, great. How many deals do I need? How many opportunities do I need? How many leads do I need? And to get those leads, how many lead generation people do I need? Right? So all that works backwards. So some people say, well, I want $1 million target, but I only want a 1 lead generation person. Well, if those metrics didn't work in your home market, they're not going to work in a foreign market. So map that out and document it. And document means put it in paper. It could be 1 page, but we talk to a new company every day. Nobody has it documented. Everybody wants to talk about it, but put the pen to paper. And then when you look at Europe, it's more clear, because the vertical type, the country, so the language. Within the vertical type, you're going to know the personality, the experience of the person. On the intro, you said we had people 10 years experience. That's an average between, we do lead generation people, but we also do field sales and channel sales. The lead gen people I've on team, it's probably closer to 3 years of experience. We typically don't take people right out of college, because they're really launching the market for a new product, a new brand. So you might have that experience and those metrics in your home market and those systems, but you're not going to have it in a new market. So we typically look for people, not 10 years of experience, but 3 to 5 to do the lead generation, to prove themselves that they can build a new brand and a new technology. So you have the profile, you have the market, you have the culture. It's really important to put metrics around the person, as far as how many calls we expect, how many emails, how many LinkedIn, whatever it is, and really manage that from a metrics perspective. And those metrics might be slightly different than your home market. So we do a lot of kind of A/B testing, calling more, emailing more, LinkedIn more. You have to be careful of GDPR requirements. There's also regulation on how you reach out. So we're very sensitive to that. What I'm talking about could be done from an outsourced perspective. So we can be providing these services to a company, because we have the portfolio and we have of people on the team and the experience and the database, but you could be building it your own as well. The same ideas and concepts still apply.
I'm curious to know how you look for culture. So if you're talking to an organization that is expanding into Europe for the first time, how do you make sure that there's a culture fit with the home company, but based in a new market?
Well, first, I think they have to show a level of sensitivity for other cultures, and a level of sensitivity of which verticals they're going to go into. Right? Sometimes we have calls with companies that they're like, no, this worked in our home market, it's going to work there. We don't want to do planning, we don't want to adapt, we just want to burst it out, and that's hard, right? And so sometimes we have some reservations about companies that are they're not sensitive to culture or to verticals or to languages. So we try to consult them to try to bring them down the path. And if they don't want to go to the path, sometimes we'll walk away from an opportunity where that we don't think it's going to be successful. So it's understanding that culture, and then trying to bring the right people on, and trying to map the right culture also to the right country. So Spain, well, probably France and Germany are the most culturally specific countries, sensitive countries. So if a company is, let's say, less culturally aware, UK, maybe the Nordics, they're a bit more Western, more open to the American way of doing business. So it also could be in the countries that they target.
Okay, so let's talk about hiring based on location. Obviously, in the past 2 years, most of the workforce has gone quite remote in nature. But maybe, Julian, you can start with the North American perspective, and then Rick can share as well. Are companies hiring internally? Are they hiring remotely? We talked a little bit about outsourcing based on what both companies do. What about a hybrid model? So maybe share your thoughts on those topics.
Yeah, so I think ultimately it's going to be so unique to each organization. Like really, you need to figure out what is the best mix that's going to benefit your team and ultimately drive the best results. There's a lot of teams and organizations out there that they're not set up for certain models. So if you're not set up to be able to outsource certain functions of your business, and you try to go ahead and outsource those functions of the business, you're likely not going to see the results, and it more or less is going to crash and burn. So you need to take a look at your internal landscape and really identify what are we set up for, what can we do, what makes sense from a cost perspective. Does it make sense to outsource? Does it make sense to do some hybrid? I think what's great with today's day and age is there's so much remote work out there, so there's more options than ever before. So there's tons of opportunities to test things out as well, which we've previously has been more of a challenge to do.
And Rick, what are your thoughts on the different ways to structure the team?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Julian. I would agree with that. And I think it's also, defining what hybrid is. So I think hybrid can be a number of things today. It can be how you employ the people, whether they're employed internally or whether they're employed through like an employer or record company, something like Globalization Partners, or whether you use a third-party outsourced team like Salesforce Europe or Predictive Revenue. What's important there is to the market, they're one team, right? They are company X with a sales message and a strategy and pushing out to the market. And the hybrid is also where you're working. Are you in the home office? Are you in the remote office? Are you in a international hub someplace? So the advantage of that is today you can find good people anywhere. They don't necessarily have to be in San Francisco or in London. You can have your hub where your SDR teams are based. But if you want an English person who's based in the north of England or a German who's based in London, it's great. I think they have to be time location sensitive. So Europeans should be in Europe, but they should be Europeans focused on their home market. So our two SDR hubs are Madrid and London, but we do have Europeans in those hubs. So it's Germans calling Germans and French in France. But they're working in the UK and in Spain, calling into those markets. So it's a hybrid team, but to the market, it's one face, one company, regardless of where they're based.
Awesome. So you shared at the start, and we call it do the math. So you talked about like doing all of the math before you actually hire. But now as we're moving into managing a team, let's talk about what type of math, what type of data do we need to establish as we manage our scaling SDR team. So Julian, do you want to share first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you're it sounds nice. Let's scale. Well, how do you scale? You just can't simply hire a bunch of SDRs and hope that you're going to generate meetings for your account executives that are going to turn into closes. You need to understand the funnel math. That's the most important piece. And funnel math, it's not just a top down, it's a bottoms up. So you have to take both into considerations in terms of, okay, and we see this often. We do, where it's like, there's only so many contacts that you can prospect. Obviously, if you're doing account-based marketing, it can expand your reach. But if you don't have enough leads, or you're having to recycle leads and contacts, are you really setting your SDRs up for success? So making sure top of funnel down, whether it be through inbound marketing initiatives, you're doing a cold outbound function, and making sure that the people that you are trying to reach out, good people that you're trying to reach out, that aligns with your ICP and persona, and there's enough of them. And then you can go down. If you have X amount of leads, you're going to have the ability to have X amount of busy SDRs that are hopefully hitting quota and booking, X amount of meetings for your account executives, in hopes of making sure that your close rates are maintaining, staying the same, driving revenue dollars. And then again, you're looking backwards to that. So if you need to, and Rick said $1 million and you have one lead gen person, it's not going to work. So if you're looking at a $5 million ARR, you can't do it with one person. So you need to make sure that you have the adequate headcount, and then go backwards. Okay, if we have the adequate account executives, we have enough SDRs. What does our lead and contact and prospect list need to look like? So that's the math that we'd consider in terms of finding that right fit.
All right, and Rick, for yourself,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point on the data. I mean, data is key. When I start these discussions, I start talking about the data, and people say, no, I want a sales team. I don't want the data. And I said, yes, but sales team starts with the data. If you don't get the data right, then the sales aren't going to work out. Yes, but no. Listen, hear me out, right? So the data is critical, and it's understanding, as you said, that ideal customer type, and then prioritizing it. So maybe the ideal customer type is e-commerce companies between 10 million and 100 million of revenue. So build that data out and prioritize that, and then get into that. And then what's the next priority? Maybe it's the larger accounts or the smaller accounts. Or okay, so that's e-commerce. What other kind of companies? So maybe it's brick and mortar that also has an online site. So prioritize those verticals, build out that data. And then maybe you might even have different SDRs trained on different vertical types, and so they're pushing different content out depending on what that vertical is. And so I would agree that you need enough data in there to be able to hit them right. You don't want to be recycling that too much. People don't want to be called 10 times in a month from the same company, so you need to get through it. And I think also on the data is reporting down to the activity level. How many calls you're making, how many emails, how many LinkedIn, reporting, and then analyzing what's working not, and A/B test that, and A/B test it in different countries, A/B test that in different verticals. Even within the individual, different numbers might work better. And if you're getting MQLs, but you're not getting SQLs from somebody, why is that? Or if you're getting leads, but leads aren't turning into opportunities, why is that? So there's metrics all the way through. So even if we're responsible for SDRs, we still want to know how those leads are turning out. Are those salespeople turning into opportunities? Are they turning into deals? And all that's important when you're rolling up for those revenue targets.
So we have the numbers, we have the metrics, we have the pipeline, we have our dashboards, we have our reports, but at the end of the day, we're managing people. And in Julian's bio, we kind of shared that you like to look at your staff or your SDRs, your AEs, and manage them with the best style that speaks to them. As you're scaling up an SDR team, how do you still speak to the people and not just the numbers?
Yeah, it's when you're bringing on a ton of SDRs, like it's a challenge. Like there's going to be these challenges, and you're scaling, and but there's going to be more challenges that you've had than ever before. I think the one thing that is crucial for me is making sure that you have really good leadership, like really good leadership layer in place. Making sure that, like in terms of what that mix is, if you have team leads or you have SDR managers, sales managers, whatever the case is, you're not neglecting SDRs as you're bringing them on. They actually need more support, especially when you're scaling a large team. For me, and once you have that in place, then you can really put the work in to really do your damnedest essentially to retain them. Make sure you're career pathing them. Having development conversations with them and supporting them, anything that they might be keen on outside of their current SDR role. The reality is, and we can call it out, is being an SDR has a shelf life. I've managed hundreds of SDRs, and I can count on the number of, probably on one hand, the number of SDRs who've been in the same position for 4 years plus. So we know that they're looking to use the SDR position as a stepping stone. So once you're career pathing them, supporting them to understand, okay, what's next for me, doing everything that you can to enact feedback, and really focusing and leaning in and investing in managing them as an individual goes so far, not only for the SDR, but obviously is much more fulfilling for the manager as well.
Awesome. Rick, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree to that. And just to add, I guess, one more kind of layer to it is make it fun for them, right? I mean, the teams should have fun. The teams are typically young. They should be engaged. They should have social activities. Don't burn them out. I mean, with the hybrid working, people can work all kinds of hours. But, if you're working early mornings, if you're working late in the evenings, give them time off during the day. Let them go to the gym. Or, if they've got family, spend time with the family. I mean, don't work more than 8 hours a day, because you're not going to get any more production. So, those metrics should be based on activities, not time. Don't, 10, 12-hour days, you see a drop off, and just poor performance, which can hurt the brand of a company. So I think it's important to make it fun, restrict the hours that they're actually working, look more at the activities than the hours. Sales management should be engaged. They should be on the phone calls. They should be participating. They shouldn't be just managing from afar, but be involved. Salespeople should be involved. So the salespeople that are getting the leads, they should, be close to the SDRs, not just saying, "Hey, those guys aren't giving me good leads." Be involved. The SDRs can join the sales calls with the sales guys. So if you're setting a meeting, join the call. Prep the call before. This is what the call is about. Join the call with the sales guys so they hear about it, see how it went. And then after the sales call, the salesperson can say, "Hey, that was good because X, Y, Z, or it wasn't so good," or have a bit of a kind of Q&A after. And I think that all makes it feel like they're more part of the team. And also, as Julian was saying, it helps that kind of career path because they get a feeling of what that next step is all about.
Coaching is absolutely amazing. And I was sitting on a round table with a VP of sales who shared that he had 2 groups of SDRs, and he gave the same sequence to both of them, the same playbook. And one group, they were just told to go ahead and execute. The other was coached, and many meetings were set to discuss how they were feeling, how they were like the expectations for performance. And of course, the group that was coached is doing much better than the group that is not coached. So it definitely has something to say in terms of the management perspective. So I appreciate both of your perspectives there.
And
all right,
coach as well. So sorry, Robin. I mean, yeah. SDRs, they're smart people just because they're junior and less experienced, and they have a lot of feedback to share. So I think the management, it's also their job to listen to the SDR and listen to them and adjust to it, because quite often we don't. You don't know, and there's going to be a lot of relevance in that feedback that they're providing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where you learn a lot about product market fit.
Yeah, my COO, my first company I worked with, he always said, "Give the authority to the information." And there is no better information than your SDRs. Absolutely not. You cannot get any better information. So, and listen to them. And it's a really great point, Rick. And I don't think a lot of companies do that for various reasons. And it's just so valuable what you can learn from your SDRs.
Yeah, wins are important. Losses are important. They document why don't people, if you can get that information, document why people don't want to talk to you.
Awesome. All right, so let's round out the conversation with compensation best practices. So Julian, do you want to share just like what you are looking for, whether it's from a junior or an experienced perspective?
Yeah, and I go back to what I previously kind of said about it's going to be specific to the organization. Just because like a Google or Microsoft or whatever, they have a great comp plan, awesome. It might not work for your company. So I always start with looking at, okay, what are the behaviors that I want to promote? What is the culture that I want? And then obviously looking at, am I a startup? Am I more mature? Looking to scale, stabilize. What is the team trying to achieve, and how can we get there? So for me, when I look at like, okay, what makes a really great comp plan? There's 3 things that are really important. They're fair, attainable, and simple. And fair, as easy as it sounds, it's sometimes challenging to make all things equal, different territories, channels, new business, luck, etc. Nothing is perfect. That said, it's imperative to make sure your comp plan is as fair as it can be across your SDR team. I know one of the biggest culture killers is if Rep A is making more money than Rep B and doing much less work. I've seen it firsthand. It's a nightmare. So being fair, attainable. Don't, one really good way to demoralize a team, and Ricky you touched on like the activities and so on and so forth, is to tell them they have an OT of X, and it turns out the only way to achieve that is to make 1,500 calls a day and work 24 hours a day. Huge way to demotivate a team. And then keeping it simple. Like their comp plans should not look like an Einstein math equation. It really should be simple. There should be no guesswork whatsoever. Every SDR should really know what's going to be on their commission check before they receive it.
Awesome. Rick, what can you add to that?
Yeah, I think that all makes perfect sense. I would agree you need to pay well because people think the SDRs are lower cost, but it's a lot more expensive to bring new people in and train new people. And there's always going to be somebody who's going to be offering them just a little bit more. So come in right, pay well, right, interview well to get the right people on the team. And as you shared, share that career path. So if it's start with SDRs and it's moving to sales and it's moving, so they can say, okay, well, somebody's offering me a little bit more, but this company's fun. They listen to me. They like me. They value the information that I have. I'm making a good amount of money and I have a career path that will stick with you longer. So I think that's important. I think the base fee should be good, especially the younger people. You shouldn't put too high on deliverables, because sometimes people will then push too hard to hit some of those deliverables, and that can also burn the brand of a company, because you don't want people forcing meetings when they're not there. You want them doing their job, articulating the value. If it's a real lead, you want them to pass it on, but you don't want them to be forcing those meetings or those leads. So don't people think, oh, I want to have lower costs or a lower base and have a really high bonus, and I'll give them X amount for every lead, but that can hurt you in the long run. So that overall, I think compensation should be fair. And it can also be on activity level. So, a certain part is just doing the activity, because if these activities are done, the results are going to be there. And some activities are easier than others. And I think lastly, which is a big thing on predictable revenue, is kind of splitting the job. If there's an outbound person and an inbound person. Inbound is easier than outbound, taking the leads, right? So if it's an outbound person, focus them on outbound and don't let them get distracted by inbound. Give that to somebody else.
Awesome. We do have a question from YouTube, and it's on the cultural fit interview. So Julian, you might want to take this. Who makes the call at the end of the culture fit? Is it the manager? Is it the team? And how do you mitigate biases? Because this can be very subjective.
Yeah, no, totally fair. So one thing to just keep in mind, it's all about setting the stage with the candidate early on in the interview process. The first thing that we say is, hey, you know what, we're going to have 5 interviews. The last one being a culture fit, and what that means is that you're going to bring a game to our team. You're going to teach us the game and play the game, and it's very informal. There's been rare occasions where it's been a huge red flag, and how we call those out, what we try to do to keep it as objective as we possibly can, is everybody is going to submit to a Google form at the end of the culture fit interview. So basically, there's questions, criteria, and then the candidate's going to be ranked based off of our core values and what's important to us, those intangibles that are really important to us as an organization. So we try to be as objective as we possibly can. If there's a huge red flag, if someone's like, you know what, I'm not comfortable, if someone on our team is like, I'm not comfortable because X, Y, and Z, then the manager will obviously have a conversation with that individual, hear them out, understand their perspective, and ultimately come to some type, I wouldn't say resolution, but ultimately the hiring manager is going to have the autonomy over that individual. But for us, there hasn't been a time since I've been at Predictable Revenue where we've had someone come in and they walked out of a culture fit interview and there was an alignment in terms of how we felt about that candidate. There's been a couple different culture pieces, but more or less we try to take the subjectivity away by having a form, and then the autonomy goes to the hiring manager.
All right, next question from YouTube is on compensation plans for SDRs and specifically around opportunities. So do you compensate them on one opportunities or just the creation of an opportunity in general, I believe is the question. Rick, do you maybe want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of see it as lead to opportunity to deal. So they're creating the lead. The lead is then passed to the sales team. The sales team is going to be creating an opportunity or not. And it's not often done, but it's not a bad idea to say, you get additional bonus for every opportunity that is created from your leads. And depending on the company, that could be 3 to 1, 4 to 1, because that keeps them aware of, are these leads, am I just putting meetings in the diary, or are these leads actually turning into opportunities? And then you can stick it one step further. Are these opportunities turning into deals? Because the more awareness that they have of the pipeline, how well those are progressing, I think is healthy in the lead generation process, and then really getting the right clients. You might find that SDR A is getting 10 leads a month, but they're only getting 2 opportunities from those leads. Well, somebody else might be getting 5 leads a month, but they're generating 3 opportunities. And so at the end of the day, it's the opportunities that are more value to a company than the leads.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. It really, really is, and it's tough to do. Like, what kind of the devil's advocate there is, and I've seen it work both ways. So I'm impartial, but I am not a huge fan of comping SDRs on activities that my account executive is doing. They don't have control over a really good closer. They don't. they do have control, as to Rick's point, around like the quality that they're passing through. So that's something that definitely needs to be managed. What I love is, if you want to go that route, have team incentives that are like the cherry on top of your OTE. So instead of impacting their ability to earn, it's actually going to be something that's above and beyond. And it doesn't have to be fiscal. It could be fun, lunch, so on and so forth. That's kind of my perspective. So again, I've seen it work both ways. So don't get me wrong. There's some companies who do it and do it really well, and they knock it out of the park. My personal perspective is not a huge fan of comping SDRs on things that they don't have complete control over.
Okay, well, we like to keep these PredRev lives short and sweet. Thank you both for all of your information. It looks like we don't have any more questions, so we appreciate both of your time, and thanks for everybody tuning in live, or if you watch this on replay and have any questions, just pop them in the comments and we'll make sure to get back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Julian.
Thanks so much.